Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Morning.
Mathata, how would you define a smaller political party?
There are two different ways of approaching this. In a setup like ours, where you already have an existing parliament, you can use the representation in parliament to determine big and small. In situations where you might be having the first election, you don't know which is big except for whatever crowd pulling capacity. Now, in our situation, you have both of those. You have old parties that are in parliament, and you can know that the African National Congress is a big party, and you can know that some other party, maybe a ZAPO, it's a small party. And then you have a new dimension of new parties like the economic freedom fighters, who are not represented in parliament but are very active out in the field. So you then have to find a way of dealing with that array of different sizes.
And in terms of the role that these parties play, how significant do you think their role is in shaping the politics of our country?
It's important. The responsibility on us as media, and particularly an institution like the SABC, which is a public broadcaster, is to always understand that the responsibility on us is to help the electorate make their decision given the wide array of parties and views and policies. So our responsibility is to give as much of the information to the people as is possible, so that when the day comes and they are going to make their cross, they are doing so from a really highly informed position.
Now, our democracy dictates that any party that meets all the IEC requirements may register to contest elections. Some people might say that this splits the constituency even further. Is this good or bad for a fledgling democracy like ours?
It doesn't really matter. The Constitution says anyone can form a party. The right to freedom of association is enshrined in our Constitution. So if you meet the IEC criteria and you register with them, as 152 parties have done for national elections, and 48 other parties have also registered for provincial. So you actually have a choice now of 200 parties that are registered with the IEC. It's always good to have more parties, people expressing their views. Whether some of them are serious or not, it's really a subjective view and opinion that one would make about whether the KISS party is a serious party, or whether the legalized marijuana is a serious party as compared to the ACDP or the UCDP or the Pan-Africanist Congress or the DA. That's a subjective view, but the bottom line is that the Constitution allows everyone who meets the criteria that is laid down to be able to canvass for votes.
Mathata, tell us a little bit about the phenomenon where smaller political parties that are headed up by former bigwigs, former political bigwigs, seem to be able to secure seats in the National Assembly. What do you think this tells us about the relevance of the political ideologies of these parties?
Well, to a large extent, that the phenomenon you're describing now would apply to a party like COPE when it participated in 2009. It was a breakaway from the ANC, and to a large extent, the policies it was espousing were really ANC policies, save for the fact that they were saying they would implement them better. If you look at the economic freedom fighters, whilst to a large extent they say their policies are based on the Freedom Charter, which the ANC says is their document, the EFF is speaking a much more radical socialist language, which distinguishes it from the ANC. So it is going to be quite interesting to see post the elections whether people are actually taken in by all these militant rhetoric, or whether they are going to stick with what sounds like reasonable policies given the state of the world economy.
Right now, a little earlier you touched on how media, what part media plays in this particular landscape. How valid do you think the concerns are that the smaller parties question media freedom and independence, especially in light of what's come up most recently with the SMS campaign and a few other things as well?
Well, if we start from the basis that our role as media is to inform people, then we must find a way of ensuring that whatever views that are out there are ventilated sufficiently for people to know what Mathata's party is standing for, and decide whether Mathata is just a rebel rouser that they shouldn't really give their vote to. And that is determined through a number of things. Here in South Africa, we are part of SADC. SADC has a protocol on equitable coverage, which does not translate to equal coverage. It's equitable and is determined by size. And that is essentially an approach that is taken up throughout the world. If you go to the UK, to Canada, to Australia, to Tanzania, that's the approach, that they should be equitable. But what does equitable really translate to in the belly belly of an election coverage? It means fairness and just. So when you are doing your election coverage plan as a media house, you must look at whether you're being fair to everybody who is there. And that there is no textbook formula that says this is fair, this is not fair. You have to be sure in your own mind that what you are doing is fair. If we take the SABC as an example, the launch of the EFF National Manifesto in Tembisa was a hugely public interest event that should have been taken live. The fact that it wasn't editorially was wrong, and in general terms showed a meanness by the SABC towards the EFF. But you can't then turn around and say, because the ANC is getting so much coverage, it means everything is lopsided towards the ANC. The ANC has two ways of getting into the news. Firstly, because it is the ruling party. When the president goes out to open some house or something as state president, he is making news like that. But he moves out of there and goes into a rally next door. That means the cameras are already nearby. That event is going to be covered. And those are the realities not only of South Africa, but they are the realities of the world. The incumbent will always be covered more than the non-incumbent.
And then, with this equitable coverage, would you think would it cover a political party like Agang, for example?
It has to be covered. The issue is, how much is it going to get? Is it going to get the same coverage as the ANC? No, because by all standards and measurements that one can use, whether it's crowd pooling and those sort of things, it is not equal to the ANC. But it must be covered to the level and extent to which it is seen to be representative.
Mathata, we want to thank you very much for having joined us and given us those insights. That was Mathata Tsedu, veteran journalist and political analyst from Cape Town, live. We'll be back after this very short break.